My wife cheated with my twin brother, and they stole $20,000. But when I found, they used my money for fraud. I sued them both and destroyed their careers, their reputations, and left them in complete financial ruin. I'm 28 years old. I work as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm, and a year ago my life went to shit in the most spectacular way possible when I discovered that my wife was sleeping with my younger brother and, as if that wasn't bad enough, the two of them were stealing my money. And I'm not talking about a few $100s. No, we're talking about serious amounts, like the kind of money that makes you wonder if you ever really knew the person you married. The thing is that when everything came to light, I didn't just sit there crying like an idiot. I decided to do something about it. And what I did basically destroyed their lives. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything seemed normal, or at least that's what I thought. I married Jessica 5 years ago, when we were both 23, and I honestly thought she was the right person for me. She looked good on paper, you know? She was smart, worked in marketing for a tech company. We had mutual friends from college. We got along well. It wasn't one of those crazy, passionate love stories. It was more like a comfortable, stable relationship. And at that point in my life, that was exactly what I wanted. My younger brother, Tyler, who's my age because we're technically twins, although I was born first by literally 5 minutes, was always the family favorite. That's a detail that's going to matter later. Trust me. Tyler was the charismatic one, the one everyone adored, the one who could do anything, and Mom would automatically forgive him. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who got good grades and got a stable job while Tyler bounced from one thing to another, trying to find himself or whatever. When Jessica and I got married, Tyler was my best man, obviously, because he was my brother, and that's what you're supposed to do. And I remember he gave a really nice speech at the wedding about the importance of family and loyalty. How ironic, right? The first 4 years of marriage were pretty normal, nothing exciting but not bad either. Jessica and I had our routines. I worked quite a bit because I was trying to move up in the company. She had her projects. We'd go out on weekends. We'd celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. You know, normal couple life. Tyler would come over for dinner like once a month, sometimes more often, and Jessica and he got along well, which seemed great to me at the time because I thought it was nice that my wife and my brother had a good relationship. About a year and a half ago, Tyler got a job at some startup for, I don't know what app thing, and suddenly he started showing up at the house more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought he just wanted to spend more time with family or something like that. But then I started noticing weird things. Nothing super obvious at first, just small details that my brain registered but that I ignored because I didn't want to be the typical paranoid, jealous husband. For example, Jessica started being much more active on her phone, like always texting and laughing. And when I asked her what was so funny, she'd say something vague like, "Oh, just work stuff," or silly memes. She started dressing up more when she knew Tyler was coming over. Not in an obvious way, but she did put more effort into her appearance. And once I heard her talking on the phone with him at 11 at night about something completely trivial. And when I walked into the room, she quickly hung up. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there, but I guess when you trust someone, your brain refuses to see the obvious. The truth is, I didn't want to be that guy who accuses his wife without proof. So for months, I just observed and felt increasingly uncomfortable but didn't do anything. Until one day, about exactly a year ago, I was looking for some documents in the home office and found a credit card statement I didn't recognize. It was an account in Jessica's name, but linked to our finances, and it had weird charges, like meals at expensive restaurants on days when she was supposedly working late, purchases at clothing stores in amounts I'd never seen in her closet. I started digging deeper into our finances because I'm a financial analyst. It's literally what I do for a living. And I discovered that Jessica had been withdrawing money from our joint savings account in small amounts over the past 6 months. Nothing so big that it would set off alarms, but enough that in total, about $20,000 were missing. That's when I got serious about it. I told Jessica I had a 3-day business trip, which wasn't unusual because I sometimes had to travel for client meetings, and instead of actually leaving, I stayed at a hotel near the house. Before I left, I installed a tracking app on her phone. Yeah, One of those kind of shady apps that are technically illegal, but that you can buy online if you know where to look. I'm not proud of that, but I don't regret it, either, because it turned out I was completely right to be suspicious. The first day I was supposedly on the trip, Jessica left the house around 7 in the evening, and the app showed me she went straight to Tyler's apartment. She stayed there 4 hours. 4 hours. Sitting in that hotel room staring at my phone screen, I felt like my chest was being squeezed with a hydraulic press. Like I couldn't breathe right, and at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about all the times I had trusted her. All the times Tyler had been in my house looking me in the eyes and acting like everything was fine. The next day I followed them. I felt like a private detective in a bad movie, parked in my car like half a block from Tyler's apartment, waiting for them to come out. When they did, I took pictures. Lots of pictures. With my phone and with a digital camera I bought specifically for this. Pictures of them walking together, of Tyler putting his arm around her, of them entering a cafe and sitting at a table in the back where they clearly thought no one would see them. And there was one particularly good photo of them kissing in the parking lot before getting into Jessica's car, and in that photo you can perfectly see both their faces. There's no way to deny who they are or what they're doing. While taking those photos, I felt a weird mix of fury and satisfaction, like I was devastated, but at the same time, I knew I was building a solid case, and that analytical part of my brain was already 3 steps ahead, planning what I was going to do with all this information. But wait, because that's not where the story ends. In fact, it's just beginning. When I got back to the hotel that night, I started reviewing our finances more thoroughly, and that's when I discovered something even worse than the infidelity. Jessica had been moving money not just from our savings account, but also from an investment account we had together, and that money had ended up in a hidden account that was in her name, but had Tyler as a co-signer. And not only that, that account had made several large transfers to something called Emerald Ventures LLC, which, after a quick Google search I discovered, was a shell company connected to a guy named Adrian Cross, who was being investigated for investment fraud. So, they weren't just screwing me emotionally, they were stealing my money to put it into a fraudulent scheme, probably with the idea that when the scheme collapsed I would be the one responsible, because technically it was money from accounts in my name too. At that moment, sitting there in that generic hotel room with its horrible beige wallpaper and uncomfortable bed, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I wasn't going to let them destroy me without doing anything about it. I was going to dismantle their lives in the same methodical and systematic way they had tried to dismantle mine. I called my best friend from college, Kevin, who's a corporate lawyer, though not specifically divorces, but he knows people who are, and I told him everything. Kevin is one of those people who doesn't get shocked easily, but even he was stunned. And he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Rob, you're going to get through this, but you have to be smart and not let emotions control you." He was right, obviously. The next day I went back home like nothing happened, acted completely normal, and Jessica also acted normal, asked me how the trip had been, and I made up stories about boring meetings and business dinners. For 2 more weeks, I kept acting like everything was fine, while secretly meeting with Benjamin, the divorce specialist lawyer that Kevin recommended. Benjamin was like 45 years old, with that air of a guy who's seen everything and nothing surprises him, and when I showed him all my evidence, he told me I had one of the clearest cases he'd seen in years. He explained that with the photographic evidence of the affair and the documentation of the financial theft, not only was I going to get the divorce without a problem, but I could probably also press criminal charges if I wanted to take things that far. The night I decided to confront Jessica was a Friday. I had prepared everything perfectly. I had copies of all the financial documents, the photos printed on high-quality photo paper so she couldn't say they were edited, and I had already talked to Benjamin about the next steps. When Jessica got home from work, I was sitting at the dining room table, with everything spread out in front of me like it was a business presentation. She walked in, saw me there, and her face immediately changed expression. Like her fake smile disappeared, and I could see the exact moment she realized everything was over. I told her, "Sit down, we need to talk," and she tried to act confused, asked what was going on with that trembling voice that was clearly fake, and I just slid the photos across the table toward her. You know what her first reaction was? It wasn't denying anything. It wasn't trying to explain. It was getting angry at me for following her and spying on her. She told me I was a psychopath for installing a tracking app on her phone, that I had violated her privacy, that how dare I spy on her like that. And I just sat there listening to her yell, completely calm, waiting for her to finish her tantrum. And when she finally shut up, I told her, "Are you done?" And then I slid the financial documents. I showed her every transfer, every withdrawal, every movement of money to that hidden account and to Emerald Ventures, and I explained exactly how much money she had stolen and how I, being a financial analyst with connections throughout the industry, had traced every penny to that fraudulent scheme by Adrian Cross. Jessica's face turned white, literally white as paper, and for the first time since all this shit started, I saw real fear in her eyes. She tried to deny it at first, said she didn't know what I was talking about, that those accounts were for personal savings, but I had every document, every signature, every electronic transfer with dates and times. I showed her the cosigner agreement with Tyler and told her, "So, not only did you cheat on me with my brother, but you both partnered up to steal from me, to get me involved in a fraud that could have cost me my career and possibly sent me to prison." She started crying. Real tears this time, not like the fake ones from before, and tried to touch my hand, saying we could fix this, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me. I pulled my hand away and told her that my lawyer would be in contact with her the next day, and that she better get a good one, because I was going to sue her for absolutely everything. That night, I slept in the guest room with the door locked, and the next morning, I left the house early before Jessica woke up. I went straight to Benjamin's office and we signed all the necessary papers to freeze the joint accounts, file for divorce with evidence of infidelity and embezzlement, and start the legal process. Benjamin also contacted the bank that handled the hidden account and filed a fraud alert, which immediately froze those funds as well. Within 48 hours, Jessica and Tyler had no access to any of the money they had stolen, and Jessica also had no access to our joint accounts. I left her completely without financial resources, on purpose, because I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the betrayal I felt. But I still had to confront Tyler, and that was going to be a different conversation because with Jessica there was certain history and complexity, but with Tyler there was just pure rage. I waited until Sunday afternoon, when I knew Tyler would be at his apartment, probably doing nothing important, and I went without warning. I knocked on the door, and when he opened it, his face showed genuine surprise. He clearly wasn't expecting to see me, and before he could say anything, I pushed the door open and walked in. I told him, "I know everything. I know about Jessica. I know about the money. I know about Adrian Cross and Emerald Ventures, and I've known for weeks." You should have seen his face. He tried to put on that concerned brother expression. That "let's talk about this calmly" bullshit. But I wasn't there to talk. I told him he had ruined what little was left of our brother relationship, that he had stolen from me not just money but years of trust, and that I was going to make sure he faced the consequences. Tyler tried to defend himself, saying that Jessica had seduced him, that she had started everything, that he had felt bad the whole time but didn't know how to stop it. Classic Tyler, always the victim, always looking for a way to make someone else responsible for his actions. I told him I didn't give a shit who started what, that they were both adults who made conscious decisions to betray me in the worst possible way, and that now they were going to live with the consequences. I also mentioned that I knew about his participation in the fraud scheme and that I had shared that information with the appropriate authorities, which technically at that moment was a lie but became true, like 2 days later when I actually filed a formal complaint. I walked out of that apartment feeling a weird mix of satisfaction and emptiness. Like I had said everything I needed to say, but also knew I was never going to get back the relationship with my brother. Not that I wanted to anyway. The next day, Monday morning, my mother called me. Apparently, Jessica had called my parents crying and telling them her version of the story, where obviously she was the victim of a controlling and abusive husband who was falsely accusing her of horrible things. My mother, Linda, who had always had a soft spot for Tyler, and apparently now also for Jessica, started yelling at me on the phone, telling me how could I destroy my marriage over some irrational jealousy, that Jessica loved me, that Tyler was just being a good friend to her when I was always working and neglecting my marriage. I didn't yell back. which I think threw her off more. I simply told her, "Mom, I have photos of them kissing. I have documentation that they stole over $40,000 from my accounts to put into a fraud, and I have testimony from multiple sources confirming they've been having an affair for at least a year. If you want to choose to believe them over your own son, go ahead. But when all this comes out in the divorce documents and possibly in the media, if the criminal charges proceed, you're going to have to live with the fact that you defended the wrong people." My mother was silent for a moment, clearly not expecting me to have such solid evidence, and then said something about how families should forgive each other and move forward. I told her she was free to forgive whatever she wanted, but that I had no obligation to do so, and I hung up. During the following weeks, the divorce process moved quickly because Benjamin was really good at his job and because Jessica literally had no defense against the evidence we presented. Her lawyer tried to negotiate several agreements where she would keep part of the assets, but I rejected every one. I wasn't interested in being generous or reasonable. I was interested in justice, and justice meant she got nothing except her personal belongings. The Adrian Cross fraud thing got more complicated when the FBI actually started a formal investigation into Emerald Ventures, and both Jessica and Tyler were contacted as persons of interest in the case because they had invested significant amounts in the scheme. Turns out Adrian Cross had scammed like 100 people for millions of dollars, and now Jessica and Tyler were potentially in legal crosshairs, not just for stealing from me, but for participating in a larger fraud. But I still wasn't done with Tyler, not completely. Remember I mentioned he worked at a startup? Well, turns out I knew one of the main investors of that startup through my work. We weren't close friends, but we had met several times at networking events. I sent him a very professional and carefully worded email where I mentioned, casually obviously, that I had discovered my brother was involved in questionable financial activities and that I thought he should know, considering he was in a position of trust at the company. I didn't have to say much more. I just planted the seed, and the investor did his own research. 2 weeks later, Tyler was fired. Not officially because of the fraud thing, because the startup didn't want negative publicity, but they made up some excuse about restructuring. But I knew the truth and Tyler knew the truth. His life basically fell apart. Without a job, with a federal investigation against him, with the family divided because some believed my version and others kept defending him, Tyler became a shadow of what he had been. And I'm not going to lie, seeing him suffer gave me a dark and deep satisfaction. I know I'm supposed to feel bad about that I'm supposed to be the bigger person and forgive and move on, but the truth is I don't regret it one bit. He betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I simply made sure he faced the consequences of his actions. The divorce was finalized about 6 months after the initial confrontation. Jessica signed the papers without fighting because her lawyer told her that if we took it to trial, she could end up owing additional money for the theft and legal costs. She kept her car, her clothes, and nothing else. The house stayed in my name. All the bank accounts that weren't compromised in the fraud stayed in my name. Even the dog we had adopted together stayed with me because technically I had paid for her and had the receipts. Jessica tried to contact me several times after signing the papers, sending me long text messages about how sorry she was and how she wished she could turn back time, but I never responded. I blocked her number after the third message because I wasn't interested in anything she had to say. As for the fraud issue, the bank eventually recovered most of the money Jessica had transferred to the hidden account because the transfers could be traced and reversed before Adrian Cross moved everything out of the country. But Jessica and Tyler had to pay significant fines for their participation, like about $20,000 each in penalties plus legal fees. Tyler had to sell his car to pay part of that, and I heard from other family members that he had to move back in with our parents because he couldn't afford his apartment without a job. Jessica eventually found another job, but in a much lower position than she had before because her reputation in the industry was ruined after her participation in the fraud came to light. The last time I saw Tyler was at our grandfather's funeral about 3 months after all this happened. It was awkward for everyone. Obviously, the whole family knew what had happened by that point, and there were clear sides. Some who supported me and others who thought I had gone too far with my revenge. Tyler looked terrible. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. Clearly wasn't sleeping well. He didn't even try to talk to me. He stayed on the other side of the room the whole time. and I honestly didn't feel anything seeing him like that. I didn't feel additional satisfaction. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel anything. It was like seeing a stranger. My mother tried to make us talk, said something about how Grandpa would have wanted the family to be united, but I simply told her that Grandpa also would have wanted his grandson not to be a thief and a traitor. And I left the funeral early. Now, a year after all this, my life is completely different. I sold the house because there were too many memories there and bought a smaller apartment in another part of the city. I focused on my work and got a promotion about 4 months ago. Now I'm a senior manager and make considerably more money. I started going to the gym regularly, not for some spiritual healing process, but because I needed to do something with all the nervous energy I had. I dated some people casually, but nothing serious. Honestly, I'm not interested in another serious relationship right now. Maybe never, I don't know. Trust is a complicated thing to recover when the two people closest to you betray you simultaneously. My relationship with my family is practically non-existent. My mother still believes I should forgive Tyler because he's my brother. My father basically stays neutral and doesn't want to get involved, and my other relatives have chosen their sides. I don't go to family gatherings. I don't celebrate Christmas with them. I've basically built a completely separate life. Does it hurt? Sometimes. But it hurts less than the alternative of having to pretend everything is fine when it's not. Kevin is still my best friend and basically my only real connection with other people. He's the only one who was there during the whole process without judging me and without trying to tell me how I should feel or act. Tyler eventually moved to another city. I think Chicago or something like that, to start over where nobody knew his story. I heard he got a job in sales, nothing glamorous but enough to live on. I have no idea if he's with someone or what he does with his life, and honestly, I don't care. Jessica also moved eventually. I don't know where. She completely dropped off my radar. There are moments where I wonder if what I did was too far. If I should have settled for the divorce and let karma do the rest. I did what I had to do to protect myself and to make sure the people who betrayed me faced real consequences, not just empty words about karma or what the universe would eventually return to them. Am I happier now? Not exactly happy, but not unhappy, either. I'm at peace, I guess. It's a peace that comes from knowing I took control of the situation instead of being a passive victim. Every time I deposit my paycheck into my bank account, that's only mine. Every time I sleep in my apartment, that's only mine. Every time I make decisions without having to consult with anyone or worry about whether someone is stealing from me or lying to me, I feel a quiet satisfaction. It's not the bright, effervescent happiness that movies or self-help books promise, but it's enough. It's mine, it's real, and nobody can take it away from me. Last week I ran into Benjamin, the lawyer who helped me with the whole case, at a Starbucks near my office. We had coffee together, and he asked me how I was, and I told him exactly what I just explained, that I'm at peace. He told me I had handled the case better than most of his clients, that many people in similar situations destroy themselves, trying to destroy those who betrayed them, but that I had been strategic and measured. I don't know if that's a compliment or just an observation, but I took it well. He asked me if I had ever considered reconciling with Tyler or with Jessica, and I told him no, that door was permanently closed. Some things aren't forgiven, some betrayals are too deep, and it's okay to admit that instead of pretending forgiveness is always the right answer. I guess if there's anything I learned from all this, it's that revenge, when done correctly and with solid evidence, isn't that terrible concept everyone says it is. People always quote that phrase about digging 2 graves or whatever, but the truth is I didn't dig any graves. I simply made sure the people who hurt me faced the natural consequences of their actions. They chose to betray me. They chose to steal from me. They chose to participate in a fraudulent scheme. I just made sure those choices didn't go without consequences. And if that makes me the bad guy in the story in some people's minds, that's fine. I can live with that. I can sleep perfectly at night knowing I did exactly the right thing for me and for my future.